Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about principles and practices. And you probably heard me talk about those on past episodes. You're probably going to hear me talk about them on future episodes. But I wanted to do an episode specifically related to principles and practices so it help you understand. So the difference is a practice will only work in some situations, but a principle will work in every situation. So I'll give you an example. My background, again, in manufacturing. Between 2005 and 2012, I logged over 11,000 hours leading cross-functional teams through process improvement, organizational change, cultural transformation. And if you're familiar with lean manufacturing, you probably know the history of lean is Toyota manufacturing for basically forever. They've kind of been the benchmark for learning lean principles. But a lot of people, they'll go into, let's say they take a tour of Toyota. I've seen this happen a lot. People will see what Toyota does. They may take a tour. They may read about it in a book. They may watch it on a video or hear somebody talk about it. And one of the things that I hear most often, again, lean is full of principles on process improvement, continuous improvement. So a lot of people see what Toyota does in the car manufacturing assembly industry, and the first thing they do is say, when they go see it in person, they say, "Oh, that won't work here. That won't work here. It worked great for them, but it won't work here." What they're saying is the practice, what they see won't work. And a lot of times they're 100% right. What they're looking at, let's say if I'm in a manufacturing operation where I'm not doing automotive assembly, that sort of thing, I may be in some other type blue collar industry, and totally different. And I say what Toyota's doing won't work here. And what you see them doing, I'm agreeing with you, it won't work there. But the underlying principle that causes them to be efficient, if you identify that principle will work everywhere. For example, one of the principles for continuous improvement in lean is, if you're familiar with it, everybody talks about eliminating wastes. And one of the things to eliminate is motion. And it doesn't matter what kind of job you're doing. If you eliminate wasted motion, wasted steps, and you improve the process so you don't have to take or make that motion, you're going to improve the process by eliminating the waste of unneeded, unnecessary motion. Today, you may need it because what you need to work on or work with is positioned somewhere else. For instance, we did a lot of quick changeover events back when I was leading those teams. And one of the things we would do is figure out and watch and analyze the process and figure out, okay, these guys or ladies, guys together, they're going to change over this machine from making one product to another product. We're going to film it, video it, look at every single thing they do, break it down, kind of like every single component of the process, and then figure out what can change, what can improve. That type of process principles applies to everyone. One of the things we'd see often is as soon as they'd get ready to go to work, we'd see them leave and go get some tools. So a simple example of a process improvement may be to put the tool. First thing, the best way, is there a way we can eliminate that tool? If they're having to take a bolt out, is there a way we can put an automated clamp where they just hit a button or flip a switch? That's a simple way. If we can eliminate the tool, and spending the money to do that makes sense. A second way is most efficient way is, can we put the tool at the machine? So instead of me having to walk 10 feet to a drawer to get it out, can I hang it? Can I put a hook on the machine so that if I need it to unloosen a bolt, I can reach right beside the bolt and pick up the wrench and loosen the bolt. Now I just eliminated 10 feet one way to get it, 10 feet back to use it, 10 feet to put it away, and 10 feet to come back. So because I hung the wrench right where I needed it, I just saved 40 feet plus my time spent searching. That's eliminating waste. You may not see it as waste initially because it's just the way it is. But when you put on your lean glasses and you start looking for waste in a system, the principle applies everywhere. You may not have a bolt and a wrench. So when I talk about that practice, it may not apply to you. But the principle of figuring out how do I eliminate unnecessary motion so that I can get the job done more efficiently. And usually when you do that, if you do it right, the job becomes easier. It's not harder. So relative to leadership principles, when some people say, they watch videos, or some people listen to audio books, some people read real books, some people listen to podcasts like this, some people go to conferences, some people take notes, some people do not take notes. All those things are practices, but the underlying principle is intentional growth. So I'm going to be sharing tons of principles throughout all of my podcasts. And sometimes I'll talk about them being a principle. Sometimes they're a practice. Sometimes I won't say nothing about it. But in your mind, when you're reading books, you're listening to people speak and talk about leadership, you got to be looking for the principle. Whatever the principle is, pull it out, figure out how to apply it in your life or in your processes, in your relationships, and then get the bang for the buck. If you hear me say something or you hear somebody say something, you say that don't apply here, you got to think to yourself, I'm missing the principle. What is the principle? Yeah, what they're saying may not apply here. What's the principle? The underlying principle. I'll give you another example. People today, and it drives me crazy because people talk about millennials, how they're so different. They're no different. They're people like everybody else who's been before them and everybody who's going to come after them. But there's all these practices. People out there making a living telling people a bunch of practices to deal with millennials. And yeah, it may work, may not work. But I'll tell you what will work with millennials is principles. It'll work with somebody who's 20 years old, 40, 50, 30, 70, 80. Any adult person, a principle will apply. And I'll give you an example. You remember back when I did the 7-part series on the 7 habits, and I talked about rebuilding a relationship with my son because I got a principle right. And he's a millennial, but I got the principle right. And I use this principle with everybody, not just with millennials. When you use principles, you don't have to know all the practices. You don't have to do something special for any group of people. So that principle was seek first to understand, then be understood. Think about it. That's a principle. If you seek to understand any human being before trying to get them to understand you, you're going to build a stronger relationship and you're going to increase your influence because it doesn't matter their age. When they see you as a person who wants to understand them and you duly understand them and they feel understood, now they're ready to listen to you. It doesn't matter who they are, what age they are. That's why the key to leading anyone, millennials and everybody else, it's the same thing. Learn leadership principles of high impact influence based on character. Then it doesn't matter. That's why people say a lot of times millennials are just different. The reason they're different, one reason they're different is they want to be led. Some of them don't even know how to call it that, but that's what it is. That's what I see. Millennials want leadership. Some of the older people were used to management. They grew up in being managed. But young folks today, they want leadership. That's why the best companies, they don't have any problem with millennials. They didn't have to change anything when the millennials come along. They didn't have to learn how to deal with millennials because they already knew how to deal with people effectively as high impact leaders. They understand the principles. So focus on the principles as we move forward. Practices, you think about the practices as usually a story of how a principle has been applied. So a lot of times I'll tell stories, and I may not tell you the principle, but you got to look for it. Sometimes I'll tell you principles, but I won't say that's what they are all the time, because it gets old saying this principle practices nonstop. But I want to teach this lesson so you'll know in life, look for the principle. Those 7 habits. Be proactive. That's a principle. That means I take responsibility. It doesn't matter who I am. That's why when I'm teaching you all these things I teach and talk about on the Blue Collar Leadership podcast, I'm not always saying it's for the boss or for the frontline entry-level worker. The stuff I talk about is for everybody at every level. That's where my passion comes from, because the frontline entry-level folks, they're hungry. They'll eat this stuff up, probably more than the leaders will, because a lot of times the leaders have settled. They've settled on a position and a salary and a rank and a title, and they're ready to just coast. But most of those leaders aren't listening to me. If you're a leader and you're listening to me, you're probably not coasting. And if you're a frontline person, you're probably hungry, and maybe you'll go tell people about this podcast, and I'm giving these daily little nuggets for a while, and then may change to weekly or something later, but for a while it's going to be little daily nuggets. So I hope you had a great day. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen, or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.